Hello again, I'm Lisa Burzell, and we're here working with molded objects and catching paint in the culinary world. So if you've been with us, you may recognize our little seahorse molds. We've got different materials here. This guy is gum paste and pastillage with a dragé eye. Here I've taken that same and mixed it with just a little bit of green loosely so we get a marbled green seahorse. Nice malt. And gelatin tinted green with a little bit of pearl in it. So we've got a beautiful mold, a lot of texture. I love the character of this little guy. But the problem is, with nothing else going on, even if I was to powder him with luster dust, at a distance, all that beautiful detail just disappears and you're left with a silhouette. So one thing airbrush is very good at is reinforcing and highlighting the details that this mold is trying to give us. So we can take the most advantage of this guy's character. So, and from there, colors, life, we can just really make the most of him. Each one of these has a few different challenges, like we have the increased translucency of the isomalt, and we've got the shininess of the gelatin to deal with. But for starters, we're going to work on just the pastillage gum paste mix. I'm working on a scraper. He's a new enough seahorse. He's fresh enough that he sticks on here quite well. And I can airbrush and move around at all kinds of angles. I can move him to me rather than me trying to find nooks and crannies. So for me, it's just a very nice, fast, flexible way to work. Then I can transfer him onto a sill mat or straight onto the cake, however I want to proceed. But I prefer working this way as opposed to in the hand or on the flat surface. So now that we've got our little introductions out of the way, let's get started. Okay, here I am testing my airbrush. You're not going to see me having to clean out my airbrush between colors because I'm going from a lighter to a darker. Here I'm getting my yellow on the seahorse belly and on the fin because I just don't want to paint him green. I want him to have a little life and personality. So I'm very carefully selecting where I want this bright color to be. And if you notice, I'm spraying just about sideways across him, because even though I'm putting color down, I'm really trying to keep the top of my scales white. And here I'm going to come in and literally wipe off a little bit of paint on the top of some of the scales, because again, I want the color in the crevices at this point. And that's the nice thing about airbrush color, you can do that. Okay, I've moved on to green. It's getting a serious amount of green on him. But again, I'm working on the edges and the details and across him. Here's where I'll start really moving that board around to get the different sides of them. And all the time I'm looking at where the details are. I've already decided where my light direction is. For a seahorse it's easy. The light's coming from above, so the bottoms of the scales are going to be the darkest. It can be a little trickier and require some planning on other designs. I'm going to move that tail and get just a little bit more color in that coil. Okay, I've moved on to brown, and this is going to be used very sparingly, and I'm really just catching the bottom edge of those little scales, the bottom of the jaw, behind the ear, the deepest shadows on the piece. I had black set out, but I decided not to use it. Very rarely do I use black in animals because it's just not really a color found in nature. So I opted for the brown. Here you can see there's actually still quite a bit of white left on those top scales. And that's a good thing. I want to use white as a color in the design. Now I have a green luster. And if you notice, I'm starting from the top down because this is where I want the light to hit and be very, very reflective. So most of the color is coming from the top down. and I'm pretty much spraying all of him. So I'm going for a little bit of a fantasy look. You can see how shiny he is now. Okay, you can see how much more detail he has than the unpainted. And that's exactly what we're going for. Here we have green marble gum paste. And all I'm going to be doing with this guy is just accenting details. Sometimes it's nice to work with a tinted fondant or gum paste because it's more interesting to build colors on. It can be a little faster too, since you already have most of the color down, especially if he has to integrate with other design elements. So I'm just hitting accents. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of brown. I could be using a darker green or a navy blue. It really does come down to personal preference and what color palette you like. Okay, here we have isomalt. Yes, it's a little brown. I cooked it a bit much. But I'm starting with brown this time. And I'm catching my accents. And much of the time that you see me working on this guy right now, especially when my hand's moving fast, there's no paint coming out. I'm just blowing straight air on him because I want that color to dry quickly so he doesn't start getting soft or melting. But again, I'm hitting just the deepest part of the shadows and airbrushing up across the bottom of those scales so I can catch all that detail. Next is green. And I'm working on a paper towel because, well, isomalt doesn't like to stick to my plastic scraper. But I am following the brown, actually going for a little bit more of a mid-tone, a little bit more coverage. Still leaving as much of the clear isomalt unpainted as I want on the highest part of him, the top of his back, part of his jaw, because I want to keep his luminosity. And one of my favorite things to do with isomalt is to come in with a pearl on top. So I'm using that green pearl again. And with isomalt, it ends up looking like glass. I just really love the colors and the delicacy that you can get with isomalt painting this way. Okay, last is gelatin. He's already green, he's already got a lot of pearl in him. So I'm just hitting him with just a tiny bit of brown to kill some of the shimmer and shine at the bottom of those scales. Again, just hitting the deepest shadows. Yep, open up that tail again. And there you go. And see what the difference is from starting out with just the white pastillage gum paste. This was the marbled pastillage, just accented. This is a white pastillage where we layered everything up, including the pearls. This is our isomalt, and this is our gelatin. Each one of these has a very different personality, and that's as much to do with the color choices we made as the product. Like, for example, I love how the isomalt looks like glass, and it's just wonderfully iridescent. It's a very unique feature. So the possibilities are endless. Just whatever your color preferences are, just again, just make the most of the mold investment you have.